We've talked a lot about the different interface elements that we have in MiniBridge. We've talked about previewing, and we've seen slideshows and all kinds of great stuff. But how do we actually navigate around inside MiniBridge? In other words, how do we explore and find things on our computer and have them preview inside MiniBridge? Well, that's a great question, and there's lots of different ways to go about doing that. Let's take a look at some of the more common ways. First of all, make sure that you have your navigation pod open on the left-hand side. And of course, if you don't have that guy open, just head all the way up to this drop-down menu here, the panel view drop-down, and make sure navigation pod is turned on. You should see what I see here now. And I'm going to start off with favorites. Now, what the heck is favorites? Well, favorites would be sort of any common location that you have on your computer. And you can see that I have several favorites already added in here. For example, I have my desktop, I have my computer, there's my Macintosh hard drive, I have my pictures folder, and so on, right? Now, what I can do is I can always add in additional folders into my favorites so that I can pull them up later on. Maybe it's a project file folder that I'm working on, or maybe it's a task or some kind of a job that I'm working on, and I can add that job folder or that project folder into my favorites inside the navigation pod. Now, how do you do that? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to navigate to my desktop here, and there's my project files. And if I double click on that guy, that brings me back to the files that you and I have been looking at here all along. So what I'll do is I'll just back up using my go back arrow, and that takes me back to my project files sitting on my desktop. And I think to myself, it would be really handy to have my project files folder as a part of my favorites or included in my favorites. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the project files folder and drag him and drop him onto the favorites icon there inside the navigation pod. And now you can see that project files has been added to my list of favorites. So in other words, now what I can do is I can go to, for example, my computer, I could go to pictures, and I can also go to project files. So pretty cool. So your favorites, think of your favorites almost as your list of bookmarks in your web browser, just common locations on your computer that you want to be able to get to very quickly, right? Now, what else do we have in addition to favorites? Well, we have recent folders. So here's a list of recent folders that I've navigated to on my computer. Again, the idea here is that I can simply click on them and MiniBridge will take me to those different locations if I want. There's my Mac hard drive, for example, or there's my desktop once again, and of course my project files, again. I could go to recent files, or I could also use something called collections. Now, we'll talk about collections in more detail in just a little while, so you'll see what they're all about. And of course, the other way that I can go about navigating is I can use my breadcrumb bar, as I call it, or this navigation bar right across the top of the MiniBridge interface. For example, I could go to computer all the way back out to my Mac hard drive. And if I double click on that guy, now you can see I'm inside my Mac hard drive. And if I double click on applications, now I'm inside my applications, and so on, right? So lots of different ways to go about navigating around. And of course, I'm going to finish off this exercise by showing you how to open a graphic from MiniBridge into Photoshop CS5. So what I've done here is I navigated all the way back to my project files, and I say, yeah, apples.jpg. I want to work on this file, or I want to edit this file. So all I'm going to do is simply double click on this guy, and what happens here is MiniBridge may think about it for a moment, but then what he'll do, if I go and collapse him here, is he'll open that file for me inside Photoshop.